Welcome to Bits About Books, the home for conversations with authors of breakthrough books on sales, marketing, and business. Founders, entrepreneurs, and individual professionals, we all need to keep track of ideas that are helping create our today and tomorrow. Bits About Books will strive to find those books and speak to their authors, go behind the scenes and understand what inspired the authors to write the books that they did and how they went about doing so. Through our conversations, we hope to gain insights that will help us to get the most out of our efforts. I'm your host Shubhanjan Sarkar, founder of Pitchlink, the next generation buyer-seller engagement platform where our mission is to make buying easy.
Welcome to Bits About Books. Thank you for your time and for joining us in this session. I have a favor to ask. While you continue to listen to the podcast, please leave a comment or rating at iTunes or wherever else you get your podcasts from. I personally look at each comment and will give you a shout out to each of you in our following episodes. It means a lot to hear from you.
Welcome to our 80th episode. Our guest today is Giorgiana Laudi, and we speak with her about her latest bestseller, Forget the Funnel, a customer-led approach for driving predictable, recurring revenue, which she co-authored with Claire Suellentrop.
But it remains that people who are responsible for growing companies, right, the practitioners that are responsible for growing companies, they still feel generally like a lot of what they do is a bit misunderstood by leadership teams. And then the leadership teams themselves, even the founders, are like, what is this? Like, what is this marketing thing? And why is it so hard? And why am I being told that it's so hard? And they want to sort of better understand and get to the answers of like, how do I practically do this thing? So really the book is about demystifying how to think about growing your company. And of course, revenue growth, new customers, all those things are very important. How you grow your team, how you scale and things like that are very important to focus on. But ultimately, all of those things are going to be a lot easier if you are delivering a great customer experience. At the end of the day, the most important thing that you're doing is serving customers and delivering value to customers.
Georgiana is a strategic advisor and speaker who is passionate about turning customer value into revenue-generating outcomes. Marketing online since 2000, she began as a marketing executive and product growth advisor in 2010, working with high-growth B2B SaaS products like Unbounce, Sprout Social, Bitly, Appcues, SparkToro, Invoice Simple, and more. Gia says, because SaaS lives and dies by the value delivered to customers and retention over time, marketing's impact on revenue extends far beyond the more traditional acquisition focus. In SaaS, marketing, whether you call it that or not, has a huge role to play and a critical seat at the table. That makes marketing and customer experience in tech one of the most innovative, interesting, and increasingly in-demand areas of specialization. It was while leading marketing for Unbounce, a largely marketing-led SaaS, that she discovered customer experience mapping. One where the entire relationship with customers, from experiencing the problem to engagement and expansion, is measured not based on transactional moments and business metrics, but instead on customers' success milestones. She says she realized that if she could operationalize the process of helping customers reach their goals to take customer insights and turn them into revenue-generating outcomes, that could change the way SaaS success is achieved. That's what she set out to accomplish with her partner, Claire Suellentrop. Now, onto this insightful episode with Giorgiana Laudi. Gia, welcome to Bits About Books. I'm delighted to have you on the show because I think your book and your organization is signaling some fundamental shifts that are happening in business and sales, marketing, and which is why I'm so excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Before we get into the book, I really want to know, why did you want to write a book?
It's very weird. I actually have never seen myself. I don't see myself, even now that, we've written a book, I still don't see myself as an author at all. I think I have been pretty opinionated for the last little while about how people make decisions about marketing and growth. And I made this discovery, this shift in thinking about marketing and growth over a decade ago. And ever since making that discovery, I was like, more people need to know about this. More people need to take advantage of being able to work in this way and make better decisions and not have to guess and not have to, live this like chaotic life of like growth and guessing. And so I was really just wanting more people to know that there is a better way. And so I was like, I got to get what's in my head out. And it was never this like, I want to be an author. It was mostly, I just wanted the idea to, be in more people's heads other than just mine.
Your organization is also called the same as the book, right? Forget the Funnel.
It is,
And,
yes.
I would like you to sort of go back a little and talk about why you decided that this is the kind of organization I would like to build. And I think we can move from there into how the book came about.
Yeah. So the genesis of Forget the Funnel on the whole was really the pairing of Claire Suellentrop and I. It was this sort of melding of, we had both left our in-house roles. We had both lived the sort of chaotic life of marketing. We both were very aligned in how we thought about marketing and its role, particularly in the like tech and startup space. And we felt a lot of pull and sort of empathy and wanting to connect with and support other folks that were in those in-house roles. So that's how it sort of came to be. Now, I mentioned before that the sort of the reason for wanting to write the book was this something that actually happened years before I even met Claire. But when Claire and I started working together, we ended up, I got this like sort of missing piece to that framework. And it was really this like customer research backed sort of way of doing things. And so her and I coming together was really about, we want to help folks who are in-house, struggling, underpaid, undervalued, misunderstood. There's this push and pull with marketing and founders inside of tech companies. And we really thought we were in a great position to be able to help those marketers. Now, obviously it's evolved plenty over time. That was 7 years ago. But that was really how that came to be. And the Forget the Funnel piece was really like the name of that was really that when you're talking about recurring revenue businesses like we do, we focus almost predominantly on B2B SaaS, the funnel has no place. There is no funnel. It really is about building a relationship with customers over the long term. Because if you think about your relationship with customers as something that happens in a funnel, even if it's got like an inverted, all these new shapes of funnels that have come about in the last while, right? Even if you think about your relationship through that lens, you're not, you haven't sort of operationalized around the customer experience. You've operationalized about the benefits to the business. And so we know that if we can think about our relationship with customers and build better empathy and operationalize around that empathy, anybody in a customer-facing team, whether it's marketing, customer success, sales, or product, is in a way better position to be able to create experiences that will, drive higher LTV relationships with customers, which ultimately benefits the business. So that was the like down with funnels kind of thing, and this new way of thinking about not only marketing but growth overall.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the funnel had a place originally, if you think of it, in the industrial model, right? Where
Right.
it is essentially stack them high, sell them low, manufacture millions of pieces of something, then go and figure out how to sell. So I think the concept of a funnel worked very well in that environment. But on one side, we are talking of personalized engagement. We are talking of knowing where every dollar that we are spending in marketing is going.
Yeah.
Yet we continue to talk about top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, and funnel per se. I mean,
Yeah.
I did a series of interviews about a year back on the B2B conversion crisis, right? So basically sales is the only function in the world where a 2% success rate is acceptable and normal. And we are gunning for that.
Right.
Let's do 2%. I mean, if you just step back, and if you're not a salesperson and you're not a
Right.
sales leader, if you step back, you'll see how ridiculous it sounds and looks. That's our goal, and that's also a result of that funnel mentality. Actually,
Right.
the way I see it. So tell me, when you got together with Claire, and you got this focus. At what point did you say? And now I'm talking time, that from the
Yeah.
point the book was published. How long back did you actually start working on it?
I was actually working on the book prior to the partnership with Claire. And when I say working on the book, very, very poorly. Like, I was doing a terrible job of making any progress on this book, because I knew I wanted to do it. I knew that I wanted this framework to be, accessible to more people. And I actually worked with a previous team member of mine and started drafting it. And I had an outline, and it essentially just sat there as this project that I just did not make progress on, as, Claire and I went on our way to, creating the business and creating material. And we ended up actually building a training program that we called Customer-Led Growth very early in 2020. Pre-pandemic, actually. We realized that our way of working together, and this melding of this customer experience mapping and customer KPIs, which I sort of brought in, the sort of operationalizing, marries very well with the jobs to be done methodology and customer research. And so what we recognized was that, like, actually what it is, it's not, because there was a lot of talk about product-led growth, particularly at that time. That's still true today. But we were like, it's not about the product. It's about the customer. At the end of the day, what we're doing is we should be focusing our growth strategy around what is the most appropriate experience for the customer. So we came up with this name that we thought was great at the time, Customer-Led Growth. Very quickly, we were like, maybe this was a mistake, because there's a bajillion other X-led growth models. So the name is not important so much, but what we knew was there was a methodology here. And so, moreover than what my original sort of idea for the book was, we decided actually to create a training program out of it. It took us half a year. There was like 33 modules. It was this, big, probably too big of a thing, but it was a great exercise for us to go through, especially as a precursor to actually writing the book, ultimately, that we did 2 years later. So we had done a lot of training and material. We were running workshops weekly. We had a training program. We were, we had a community of in-house practitioners, either in marketing roles or heads of product or CS, a lot of founders. And so we were engaging a ton with the sort of the practitioners of this type of methodology. So we had we were very deep in it. The idea for the book didn't start when we started writing the book. The idea was, pretty well formed ahead of time, which really, really helped when it came time to actually, quote unquote, put pen to paper and write it.
Yeah, and I think I have heard a few other stories where, in fact, Ted McInnes, if you happen to know how they came about doing it, was because he was working on with this company called Tether, and they had the opportunity in pandemic to actually analyze millions of calls, and
Right.
basically it came out of that.
That's
So
right.
I can pretty much understand how the actual feedback that you are getting in the workshops
Yes,
sort of solidified what you were thinking, and
totally.
you could see the correlation, and actually I see
Yeah.
that completely.
Yeah. And working with companies as well, right? It wasn't just the practitioners. We were alongside of that community and the training. We were also working directly with companies. So we were, dealing with a lot of founders, how they would articulate and think about the sort of problem or opportunity that they wanted to solve, how they were engaging with their team, some of the operational side stuff. So there were years of working in that way before the book, sort of came about.
Yeah. That makes it so rich. In fact, and validation. It's not very difficult to think up a framework.
Right.
I mean, there are many people who do, and which have all their value. But the question is, when you actually get the ability to test it out and
Right.
see it play out, and that's
That's
where
right.
the value comes.
Yeah, that's right.
So tell me a bit about the actual writing process. So you have all this material, you have some outline that you had done before you started, forget the funnel. Then you are together.
Yeah.
Then you crafted this workshop, which is a very long workshop spread over many months, many weeks, many
Yes.
modules,
Yes.
and then you are interacting. You are seeing that playing out in the market and so on, and you're collecting data. Then what? How did you actually go about putting it all together?
Yeah, so the process itself took 2 years, beginning to end. Part of the reason why it took so long, although I don't think many authors would think that 2 years is actually long, because I've heard of stories where it's taken much longer than that. But part of the reason was that we decided to turn off marketing for our business. We decided any of our spare time on marketing was going to be not. So we turned off all of our marketing, but we did continue to work. So we're not full-time authors. We didn't, stop working for any period of time and go decide to write. There was no retreat or anything like that. It was something that we actually did, sometimes with much difficulty, while we were continuing to work with the companies that we were working with. So we tried to remain as focused as possible on doing the work of working with companies, and then carving out, I believe it was about 4 hours a week we would carve out for actual book writing. We did have a support. So Claire is actually a writer. I am not a writer. Claire is actually a very talented writer, but even that, we knew that because we were going to be, still running our business alongside of the writing of this, we had somebody basically help us through the process and coach us through the process. So we would spend Tuesday mornings and Thursday, I think it was Tuesday mornings and Thursday mornings, 2 hours each, every week. And I believe we did that for about a year. And then we went into editing mode. And then it was more about the actual launch of the thing. So end to end, it was about 2 years. Maybe just shy.
That's a long time, and I can see the power of time put into a very, I would not say brief, but relatively
Yeah.
less number of pages.
Yeah.
I think the value is very, very high in that.
Yeah, there was a lot of effort put into making sure that the book was short. But I do wonder, in retrospect, would we have been better off had we just said, you know what, let's turn off everything. Let's do nothing but write this book for the next 3 months. I genuinely wonder if that would have been a more effective strategy versus stretching it out over this longer period of time. But at the time, It felt like the most realistic thing to do. So that's what we did.
So before we move on to the actually to talk about the book, the one last question is that what was the dynamic between you and Claire? So where you said, okay, this is the structure of the book.
Yeah.
So these are the 4 major, sections, and these are the chapters. So you take on these 2 and I'll take on these 2. Was it something like that,
Yep.
or was it something else?
It was. We both worked on all of it, obviously, but there were, again, because we had developed this training program previously, we actually made those decisions years prior. So there were certain modules or lessons or material that Claire would be more likely to teach than I would, and vice versa. So while I did have this outline previously, it did shift. Basically the first section of the book is really around setting yourself up for success, really articulating and getting clear on what is the problem that you want to solve. Really making it clear, how customers ultimately represent that opportunity to solve that problem, how to set up the team, and essentially, it's really the setup is the first part of the book. The second part of the book is very much about customer research and how to actually dig for the insights that you need to answer those questions that you came up with in the first part. And so that section is really more what Claire would focus on. So how to run interviews and how to parse that research and things like that. And then we shift focus into part 3, which is more around the operationalizing, the, how to define, when is a leap of faith that a customer takes. How do you develop KPIs around that? and then ultimately how do you operationalize it. So there's some sections where it leans a little bit more Claire and some sections that it leans a little bit more my way, but we both participated in all of it, honestly. And at this point, it's been 7 years that we've been working together. It's all very melded together, but because we have this advantage of, co-authoring, we are at an advantage where we can, divide the work up a little bit and make it, a little bit easier. But she could speak about my material, I could speak about her material at this point, and there'd be no difference between the two.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. So, let's get to the book.
Yeah.
And I think we should start at the beginning, which is why we need to forget the funnel.
Yeah. So we focus predominantly, like I mentioned before, on product companies and tech and largely B2B SaaS. And part of what we were seeing when we first started working together was this growth at all costs, this spaghetti at the wall, the sort of chaos of we need to grow, lots of motivation for that, right? There's lots of reasons for that. They've changed over the years. Previously, right, we were talking 10 years ago or so, it was very much we need to show this like hockey stick growth to investors and the board because we needed to prove that acquisition was going to hit this certain like velocity. And so there were a lot of decisions made to grow companies very, very quickly. Again, the reasons have changed now, but there's still somewhat that chaos that exists, but it's for different reasons. The pressure is has shifted slightly, but it remains that people who are responsible for growing companies, right, the practitioners that are responsible for growing companies, they still feel generally like a lot of what they do is a bit misunderstood by leadership teams. And then the leadership teams themselves, even the founders, are like, what is this? Like, what is this marketing thing? And why is it so hard? And why am I being told that it's so hard? And they want to sort of better understand and get to the answers of like, how do I practically do this thing? So really the book is about demystifying how to think about growing your company. And of course, revenue growth, new customers, all those things are very important. How you grow your team, how you scale and things like that are very important to focus on. But ultimately, all of those things are going to be a lot easier if you are delivering a great customer experience. At the end of the day, the most important thing that you're doing is serving customers and delivering value to customers. So if at the root of it all, you can think about how to deliver appropriate, high value experiences to your customers, your business is going to benefit. Not only does your business benefit revenue wise, but your team benefits because they understand what to do, when, how, to who, and in what context these customers are in. So it makes their jobs a lot easier. So there's this sort of it's a triple benefit here. One is obviously to the business and in revenue growth. The other is to the team because they understand what to do, how to make decisions, how to think strategically. They don't have to guess and throw spaghetti at the wall. That relationship is facilitated between the business and the team. And then of course, customers benefit ultimately because you're providing them with the most, the best experience possible. So it's really very beneficial. But at the root of it, it's if we can understand what is the most appropriate experience for our best customers, then we can deliver that experience in a more seamless way. Our team will know how to deliver that experience. And not only that, we'll know how to measure our ability to deliver that customer value, which ultimately impacts those lagging indicators of success, which is revenue growth. So we talk a lot about leading indicators of success and lagging indicators of success. And one helps, take action and help the team feel like they can make an impact and ultimately impact those lagging indicators of success that the leadership team and founders are thinking so much about. So hopefully that sort of answers the question, but it's really around if we root ourselves and build our sense of success of our business around the success of our customers, we will benefit. If our customers win, our business wins.
Absolutely. So what was the kind of resistance that you found when you were talking about this concept that you need to forget about, getting a lot of people
Right.
top, not worry about their experience, but sort of move them through, continue to, your focus should be in getting more and more people through into your funnel, so that at all points you are able to sort of take out whatever the number of customers that you are needing without really focusing on what happens after you get them.
So there is a big resistance to customer research. I'm sure this is not news to anybody, certainly not you. There's a big resistance to doing research. I think there's a many misunderstandings about research as being a long sort of make work, lengthy, expensive analysis paralysis type of endeavor, when research doesn't have to actually be that way. There's many ways to do customer research. I mean, we've talked about this at length on our podcast, objections to research, and customer blind spots and things like that. I can understand why there's a resistance to research. Most people do research really poorly. And if they conduct research very poorly, then the output is terrible. And then forevermore, their perception of research is awful, that it doesn't actually help. And we know enough about our customers and nobody's got time for that. But if you run research well, it's actually your shortcut. It takes way less time to conduct customer research well, get to your answers a lot more quickly than like trial and error. So any resistance, I mean, years ago, when companies would reach out to us, they would say things like, we need more leads. Thankfully, that's not the case anymore. Now they're coming to us saying, we need to better understand our customers because I need to better enable my team, or there's been a shift in the market. There's a new competitor, or things have changed. And also another one that we hear a lot now too is we want our team to be better equipped. We want our team to witness what good looks like and learn from this process and, benefit ultimately. So there has been a big shift, thankfully for us. Many times companies will show up. Actually, I'll say almost every time we get a call from a company now, from a B2B SaaS founder, they've got our book in their hand. So it's a very different situation than, let's say, 5 years ago, where it was, we need more leads. And there was a lot more of like, okay, great, we can talk about how to get you more leads, but let's talk a little bit more about, how is your website performing? What's your trial to pay conversion rate? How do your free users ultimately convert into paying customers? What are your retention rates? We look a little bit more at the health of the business versus just filling the top of the funnel. Very quickly, when I'm in conversations with founders and I say, okay, so great, you want more leads, you want more customers, of course. Tell me about the moment that your customer realizes that they need a new solution, that their old way is not going to solve their problem anymore, and they need something new. Tell me about that moment for your customers. Because if your goal is to more leads or get more customers, tell me about that moment where that prospect or that lead becomes a lead for you or a prospect for you. And almost every single time the founder says, I don't know. I think it's this. It was this at one time. Well, when I was my customer, when I came up with the idea of my company, it was XYZ. It's probably changed over the years. Well, I don't know. My company's 5 years old or 10 years old. So immediately they realize, we don't actually know what is going on in our ideal customers' heads, before they know that we exist. And they recognize very, very quickly that in order to get more leads and get more people to the front door, they need to understand what that moment is, what that trigger moment is that leads somebody to seek out a solution like theirs. So that conversation on its own is generally enough to convince a founder that we need to learn a little bit more about your customers. And not only what was the trigger moment that leads somebody to seek out a solution like yours, but what is it about your solution that convinces them to choose you over all of the other options? That's another question that almost every founder wants to have more insight into and to understand better. What is their differentiated value? What are we actually competing against, right? Is it our direct competitors, or is it the old way? Is it a spreadsheet? Is it a virtual assistant? There's lots of things that we compete against. And so having a better understanding of how you need to sort of position your offering once that customer gets to your website or experiences your brand for the first time, getting that insight. And then, of course, also when I would speak about things like, okay, and then let's say they've made the decision they've taken that leap of faith to try your solution. What is that experience on the other side of your sign up, whether it's a product-led situation or not, that convinces them to keep going? Like, what is that aha magic moment for them? And there's a lot of theories. If I would ask that question to a founder, they have a lot of theories, but they don't know 100%. So all of a sudden, these customer blind spots become very, very obvious. And founders realize that they don't need to be guessing. We can actually do very sort of pointed and well-run research to get the answers to those questions, which means it's actually ultimately a shortcut versus the trial and error that they've been relying on previously.
It's time for a short break. Stay with us. After the break,
of course, you should go into your research with the specific thing that you're trying to learn. Generally, it's, oh, what should my positioning and messaging be? Oh, my trial to pay conversion rate is terrible, or I'm losing customers, right? It could be you're trying to tackle or solve one of those specific challenges. But ultimately, what Jobs to Be Done research allows you to do is have this sort of documentary view of your customer, of how your customer met and fell in love with and ultimately build this lifelong relationship with your solution.
You are listening to a Business Podcast Network original. Podcasting is the fastest growing content marketing opportunity, which is untapped. We can help you craft your audio strategy and help leverage the wide reach and easy streaming capability that the smartphone penetration provides. It is easy, it is powerful and personal. Talk to us to find out how podcasting can help you build your brand and reach out to your targets like never before. Write to us at bpn@bizcast.in. That is bpn@bizcast.in. Business Podcast Network. Podcasts end to end. Welcome back. I'm Shubhanjan Sarkar, your host for Bits About Books and founder of PitchLink, the buyer-seller engagement platform. Let's dive right back into the episode where we left it.
I think if you look at the movement on focus of, say, what Gainsight did a few years back, they brought the focus to customer success. I mean, that term didn't possibly exist before these folks sort of what they call created the category and so on. I think that thought process was that the sale ends with the sale. Mm-hmm. And what happens next is, I mean, it's okay if it is obligatory that, okay, 10% of our money is kept because the company insisted that they want to see the implementation and so on. But otherwise, let's find the next customer. I mean, that was the sort of the thought process. Mm-hmm. And we were not paying attention to churn. We are not thinking of all that at all. I mean, it was part of the same funnel thought process, again, if I may say. So I think starting to focus on customer success and I think where we are headed is that sales will go even further. I would like to hear your thoughts. I mean, may not be today, maybe some other day. Actually, we need to define what outcome the customer is looking for when they're engaging with you and whether you're delivering that outcome or not. Mm-hmm. I think that's where it's going to go. It's not even whether my product worked in his environment, whether it spoke to the other stack or whatever. It's really beyond that, which will sort of ensure whether they're in it for long or not. Anyway. Mm-hmm.
I have lots of thoughts on that. And actually, that is part of what the customer-led growth framework is. So I'm describing customer research so far. I'm only scratching the surface of exactly what it is that you're describing. So once we can identify, and so the second part of the book is really around like, how do we tap into that better understanding of customers, identifying what is that ultimately desired outcome that they're looking to achieve, right? What is their job to be done? We rely on the job to be done methodology for the type of research that we conduct because it is so broad in scope, which is very, very helpful. Now, of course, you should go into your research with the specific thing that you're trying to learn. Generally, it's, oh, what should my positioning and messaging be? Oh, my trial to pay conversion rate is terrible, or I'm losing customers, right? It could be you're trying to tackle or solve one of those specific challenges. But ultimately, what Jobs to Be Done research allows you to do is have this sort of documentary view of your customer, of how your customer met and fell in love with and ultimately build this lifelong relationship with your solution. Because even if we're not talking about B2B SaaS, which is built on the recurring revenue model, generally most businesses want recurring revenue, even if they don't have, a B2B SaaS company. They want returning customers. So what we do with that sort of documentary of that customer understanding is operationalize it into a customer experience. So again, we do focus predominantly on recurring revenue businesses, but there's, this is still applicable across the board. We hear that time and time again. People reach out to us and they go, we know that you talk to B2B SaaS, it's for B2B SaaS, but this really does apply for nonprofit, more traditional e-commerce is a bunch of other applications for this. But all of that said, what we do ultimately after we get that documentary understanding of customers, of their jobs to be done, then what we do is we operationalize it in this sort of end-to-end customer experience where we break it down into the struggle phase, the evaluation phase, and the growth phase. The struggle phase, as you can imagine, is them out in the world experiencing the problem that your product solves. They discover that you exist and they start to evaluate your solution against all of the others. The evaluation phase is really where they make that decision to truly evaluate your solution in a product-led environment. That might mean they sign up for your product and they need to get to some sort of first value very, very quickly. In general, that's not a hard rule, but in general, we want to get them to value to prove to them that we fulfill the promises that we made on our website, right? So that we can actually prove to them that we can do what we said we can do. And then ultimately, value realization is where we're trying to get them to within that evaluation phase. Value realization is we have proven to our customer that we can solve the problem that they came to us to solve. That's the end of the evaluation phase. I haven't even talked about the growth phase yet. The growth phase is where recurring revenue businesses actually get really interesting. So inside of the growth, after we've helped them get to value realization, that might mean they've added team members into their solution. They're using your product in a way that shows that they've gotten to a level of engagement that says, okay, I can fire my old solution now, and this is the solution for me. I'm ready to invite my team members or my stakeholders, whatever that experience looks like for them. And then they tip over into growth phase. And growth phase is about continued value and value growth. So continued value really is about that ongoing engagement. Part of the reason why we talk so much about continued value is because, especially for recurring revenue businesses, particularly product-led ones, if your customer stops using your product or solution in any way, you should know, right? We want to help them get to this. Product teams would call it like stickiness. And engagement. Like, we know our customer is happy and healthy when they're in continued value and they're experiencing continued value. This is when we start to break out the other toys in the toy box or tools in the toolbox, whatever your analogy is. We start showing them more advanced ways of using our solution. And then that actually gives us the opportunity to see, are they using our product in a continuous way that delivers a lot of value? Do they stop? And if they stop, that's our cue. Okay, we've got to go in and find out what's going on. We need to, some sort of re-engagement, whether it's one-on-one, whether it's programmatic. And then it's important for us to also think about value growth. And value growth, like I said, is where things get very interesting for, recurring revenue businesses, because we start talking about net revenue retention. We're not having churn conversations anymore. We're having net revenue retention conversations. So it's really important to understand the context your customer is in at each one of those milestones so that we can create the most appropriate experiences. And then we need KPIs to measure our ability to help our customers get from one to the next. So you're absolutely right. It's not about that initial sale. It's about that not only lifelong relationship, but also continued value and expanded value that we're delivering to our customers over time, because we want a lifer, right? We want that type of customer that we often describe as like the customers that you would have to pry your product out of their cold, dead hands, right? Those are the customers that we want more of. And so those are the customers that we should be designing that customer experience for, and actively eliminating and not attracting the others, right? Not all customers are created equally. So it's just as important to deter poor fit customers as it is to attract the right fit customers.
Absolutely. Broadly, about the second part of the book, if I want to talk about, there are two questions there. First question is, how difficult is it to actually have meaningful conversation with customers? How open are they to actually share? Because I've heard people say that it's not easy to do a customer interview, because most of the times they're telling you things that you already want to hear, and they're not really telling you what's going on, and so on.
This is an excellent question. It is not difficult. So, and the reason that I say that it's not difficult is customer interviews are an art. There is skill required to run a customer interview well. Why I say it's not difficult is because what we have found is that, first of all, we don't need that many conversations in order to see meaningful patterns. And we can talk more specifically about that if you want to, like what the numbers are. But additionally, we're not asking them about, what do you think about our product? What do you think we should do next? And how much do you think we should charge for XYZ? We're asking them, what was going on in your world that led you to need a solution like ours? When you found our solution, what was it that convinced you that we might be the right solution for you? We're asking them questions. They're not subjective. They're completely objective. Tell me what happened. What did that day look like? What was the conversations that you had? There's no conjecture there. It's really just, tell me about what happened in that day. And you're not asking them about, what should we build next? Or what do you think about this feature? That is a very different type of research than what I'm describing here. So we're really looking for that documentary understanding of their life, which makes the conversation that you're having with the customer much less sort of slanted, much less challenging for the customer to answer, because it's not subjective. They're not giving you their opinion. They're telling you just objectively what happened. So that helps a lot. The other thing is that we only want to learn from our customers who are happy. So we're not trying to talk to our unhappy customers. We're trying to talk to our customers that want us to be successful, right? The customers that want us to succeed and that get a lot of value from our solution. And so generally what we have found is that those customers are happy to talk to us and happy to spend 20 to 30 minutes on a conversation. And so I guess the other thing that I would mention is we don't need a ton of customer interviews. I talked to a lot of folks where they think that they need to run 50 customer interviews. No, you could speak to a dozen customers, 10 or 12 customers, and start to see enough patterns emerge where you start to feel confident that it is representative of the customer, of the wider customer base. But it is also very important how you choose those customers, because like I said, not all customers are created equally. So choosing who you speak to is wildly important. They have to be happy customers, right? So they have to be paying. That goes without saying. They have to be happy. They have to be engaged with your solution today. So it can't be something that's like in the background that they don't think about very much. They have to be getting, value and engaged. And then also recency is another thing that's very important that I think a lot of people don't prioritize enough when they do research. So it's very important that your customer made a decision recently enough ago that they remember what life was like before. Right. Otherwise, they're going to start filling in gaps in their memory. Now, what is difficult about doing customer research is leading those conversations. That can be an art for sure. We did an episode all about, how to run those conversations successfully. One thing that I would recommend to maybe your listeners who are thinking about doing this kind of thing, and this sounds self-serving, but it has nothing to do with us. Bring in an expert who has, lots of experience running customer interviews. It will be worth every penny. Even if you only bring them in to run those calls, then you're assured that those calls, you're going to get the absolute maximum value to your business from those calls, versus putting somebody who's a little bit less experienced in running customer interviews that might miss things or miss the opportunity. And then you need to run more interviews because you haven't gotten those patterns.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, because I think a lot of times when we think that it is doable and we can do it in-house, it could be true if they could not do anything else for during that period, which is next to impossible. That never happens.
Right.
So if you don't have a dedicated person working on this, if you wanted to do it in-house, I completely agree. You should bring in somebody who has run this kind of interviews, and they know what can go wrong. They can sense that this is not going the direction that I'm going, or this particular customer is not in the frame of mind that I need him in or her in. So I should rather quit and go back to her later, and so on.
Or they know how to dig for things as well. They know how to frame questions so that they're, that they get the answers that they want. They know how to set up the conversation, dig in where they need to for things. That's what we see happen a lot, is that people don't ask enough follow-up questions. They follow a script as opposed to it feeling like a conversation. So that's a big part of why companies reach out to us, is so that not only do they have more insurance that the customers that we choose to speak to are chosen very carefully, because that's a huge part of this process, is making sure you're speaking to the right customers, but that the interviews are actually run well, and that the team can witness all of it as well. And that the insights are also parsed in a way that the maximum value to the business is pulled out of those conversations. So that's a huge reason why customers reach out to us, is so that not only can we do the job well, but that the team can witness the process and learn from the process as well, so that they can continue, after we're gone.
Sure. So I told you I had two questions. The second question is, what happened? And you have a chapter on that as well. I mean, I presume it's the same thing. When you are getting started, and you do not have necessarily the kind of customers who would ideally give you the information that you need on, or the data required to model the best kind of experience that you can for the rest of it. How do you apply these thoughts? I mean, you're a startup, you are starting off, you really don't have so many customers who have been successful or who have been, you get the drift.
Yeah. So I would say this process definitely, the process that we run through in the book definitely does work best if you have some customers. You don't have to have many. Like I mentioned, even 10, 12 conversations can be enough to see those patterns emerge. In terms of like a very inception, like you have no customers yet, you haven't even launched your product, I would be doing more customer development style research versus customer research like we're describing here. So highly recommend, like the mom test, that type of book, right? Where you're doing more customer discovery. It's similar type of research, but it's a little bit different because you're actually asking more in hypotheticals versus what we tend to advocate is for, we don't need hypotheticals. You have a product experience that is delivering value today. Find out what that value means to your customers, and then reverse engineer that experience for them to make it easier for those amazing customers to get value from your product more quickly, more seamlessly, and increase conversion rates. Generally, when we speak with companies who think they're in that situation, we're like, actually, we don't have customers to learn from yet. They actually do. They have customers that maybe didn't, onboard into the product in exactly how the company would like to do in the future. That actually happens a lot as well. We just spoke about that recently, where like, what if our current customers don't represent the direction we want to take the company? Your existing customer base is still a wealth of knowledge to validate some of those decisions, and find out from them whether or not that experience would work well for them. Because at the end of the day, it is really about like, what is because the focus of the research is, what is that job to be done, right? What is that problem that they're trying to solve? It's not about you, it's about them. And so that style of research, even if your current customer experience doesn't perfectly represent where you want to take the product, P.S. it never does, because products are never done evolving. We're always looking to the future. But if you can understand that the why of your customers and that job to be done, it doesn't matter, because you can use that understanding of customers to create those better experiences and make decisions about the direction you want to take, not only the product, but the customer experience.
Sure. We would move to the next part of the book, and I would say that maybe we can talk about both where you are talking of the identifying the customers' jobs to be done and identifying the customer-led KPIs. I would presume that they will have some connect between the two, and if you care to elaborate a bit on both.
So they do. So the jobs to be done, basically understanding what it is that your customers are trying to achieve with your solution, is sort of that top level why. But there is a level deeper than that, where we do what we call value mapping. And it is essentially when we can take what customers said was valuable to them, identify what those patterns are. So what we do is we identify, like, we call them value themes. So it's literally a hierarchy of how often and how much energy was put into certain things that they, certain value that your product provides to them. Generally, we come up with value themes. There's usually, about 3 or 4 value themes. And, they might be something like, they helped me communicate value to my stakeholders. So the example that we use in the book actually is Rand Fishkin's startup, SparkToro. So we worked with SparkToro. I don't remember all the details perfectly, but it is in the book for anybody who's interested. Essentially, what we learned from their customers is that one of the things that was really valuable to them is that SparkToro would allow them to communicate new ideas to stakeholders, whether they were in-house stakeholders or clients. And what we figured out by doing the value mapping was so it helped me communicate value to my stakeholders, whether or not in-house or clients. And what we realized was actually there was a feature that we could directly map to that value, and that was the feature of a list inside of SparkToro. And when we looked at the SparkToro customer experience, we realized that lists, it was there, but it was kind of buried in the onboarding experience. It was later on that we introduced, or that I should say that SparkToro introduced lists to new customers. And so we realized that if we moved that feature earlier into the product experience and the onboarding experience, those new customers would see that value more quickly. And we made that connection actually with SparkToro, and we did that value mapping, and they moved lists earlier into the customer experience, into that onboarding experience, and their trial to pay conversion rate doubled. And that was within 2 months. We emailed the team and said, how is it going? And trial to pay conversion rate, or actually it's free to pay conversion rate, had actually doubled because that we mapped that value of that communication tool being so valuable to their new customers, with them actually experiencing that more directly in the early product experience. So that's the kind of value mapping that we do. And that's actually very related to KPIs. So again, we do that value mapping by identify the top value themes. We value map to the parts of the product that deliver that value. And then what we do is when we're doing the customer experience mapping, like I described earlier, we identify those milestones. We say, okay, what product usage would show us that they got to first value, or that they got to full value realization, or that they are experiencing continued value, and so on and so forth. And so because of that value mapping that we've done, which we were able to do because we understand their job to be done, we can map specifically to the parts of the product that they should be using at any given time. And not only what what features they should be using, but also at what frequency. Should they have generated, at least one list? A very common one is maybe they've added an additional team member. How many team members should they have used by this point? And so our goal becomes helping customers get to that level of product usage so that we know they've experienced first value, or so that we know that they've experienced value realization. And those KPIs are basically what we stay focused on to help them get to those moments of value throughout the customer experience. And that's actually what I mean when I talk about leading indicators of success versus lagging indicators. A sign up is great. You know what's even better? Activation, right? A sign up for your product. Cool. They decided to give their email over. It's a give. It shows intent. But what's actually valuable is that they use your product in such a way that proves that you are going to be able to solve their problem. That's worth so much more to you than a credit card being provided. So if we can focus on those leading indicators of success, like first value and value realization, those lagging indicators of success will definitely benefit. So that's how we do the value mapping, with what customers say is important to them, to the specific parts of the product that actually deliver that value. And then the product usage becomes the KPI.
2 things come to mind. One is that these KPIs, which in that case will actually differ from product to product and customer to customer.
They absolutely do.
It's not a standard, okay,
that's right.
Follow these 5 things and you will know. I mean, do your net churn, do your net retention.
That's right.
Whatever. It's not that simple.
No.
I think you have to do it much more granularly, which is specific to your product. This is very interesting, because I think the data that 60% of SaaS signups never come back for a second time. It was out there for a long time, but I don't think we were paying attention to it.
I think it's actually more like 70%, actually. It's a very high number. And look, the companies that we hear from, some have trial to pay conversion rates that are like 10% and lower, right, on the free to paid. And there's no reason for the numbers to be that low. And if you think about, if you doubled that number, so if your trial to pay conversion rate is 10% and you doubled it to 20%, what does that represent for revenue? A lot more than sending more traffic to your homepage. So that it becomes really obvious when you start to do the math on what should we be optimizing our trial to pay conversion rate, or should we be paying for more traffic to our website? The answer is very, very clear. So it becomes a very easy decision to make to focus on optimizing your customer experience and improving those downstream conversion rates before investing in top of funnel. And I would absolutely pick on, weekly active users, monthly active users, daily active users. Yeah, sometimes that is an indication that your customers are engaged, but not always. With a lot of products and companies that we've worked with, that's not actually the indicator of ongoing engagement. It's actually more a certain feature is being used in a certain way, in a certain frequency. And it's ultimately, it provides the team, not only the product team, but the customer success team. If you have a marketing or customer marketing team, a lot more to work with in terms of the customer education, emails that you leverage, customer education programs, help docs, things like that. So it becomes really exciting for the team to build those experiences because they understand so much more the context that customers are in and the value that customers receive. So it also really helps, again, not only those lagging indicators of success, but it really helps the team understand their role in the customer's experience and the customer reaching value, which ultimately benefits everybody.
I agree. And I think the reluctance of not engaging with customers, especially in the software business, is well documented and very high. I mean, we like to do what we like to do. We are here, we are building something, middle of the night or whenever we are up, and we are coding away, and we believe that should be enough.
Right.
And unfortunately, if you have to sell that product, it's not so.
Yeah.
Let's talk about customer-led practices and what you see out there, and what do you classify as customer-led practices, and what is it there, A, to look out for, and B, to learn and from that, so that you can set the right framework for your thinking when you're thinking about your business.
Yeah. Every company likes to think of themselves as customer-led, of course. The majority of the time, unfortunately, it's just not true. Sadly, I've seen many companies refer to themselves as being customer-centric and customer-led because their satisfaction rating is high and their customer support team is great, and they think that is enough. Unfortunately, that is not a customer-led company. That is a customer support team that is probably doing more than their fair share of. We often describe it as like playing whack-a-mole. Trying to solve the problems in your customer's experience, and your customer support team and customer success team, thankfully, is very good at doing that job, but that is not what they should be doing. So what we see as being actually being a customer-led organization, it means really operationalizing how the team works around that customer experience, and constantly validating that you are delivering experiences to your customers that are valuable, and validating that you are always rooted back in what is your customer ultimately trying to achieve. So we have we create these resources when we work with companies. Obviously, there's the initial research that is conducted to identify the jobs to be done. there are often, by the way, I didn't mention this before, but there's sometimes more than one customer job to be done. And what we do is we encourage companies to choose one for the moment and prioritize that one. Sometimes it's very obvious that they should only be focused on one. Sometimes there's companies that have been around a little bit longer, or their product offering or their solution is quite a bit wider in breadth, where actually they can solve more than one customer job. And in those situations, what you would do is you would create a customer experience map for both of those customer jobs, and you would provide onboarding experiences that addresses each of those separately. So I would consider that to be a very customer-led practice, where customers who come through the front door, you identify what their job to be done is in some way, shape, or form. There's lots of ways to do that, and we can talk about that if you're interested. But you identify what their job to be done is coming through the front door, so that you can provide them with an onboarding experience and a product experience that directly speaks to that job to be done. So you might have 2 customer journey maps in that scenario, and 2 different customer experiences that you're crafting. Anytime there is a marketing campaign, anytime there is a feature release, anytime you're optimizing that onboarding experience or running a customer education program, anytime your sales team is provided with, leads, if you're in a product-led sales environment, anytime, a customer is handed over to sales, so to speak, always providing the context for that customer, not thinking about that customer in these broad strokes that we tend to get so used to, but really thinking about, okay, this customer has this particular job to be done, especially if we're talking about a handoff to sales, right? They've been using the product in this way. Of course, they fall into our ICP. That sort of goes without saying. But this is the context for that customer, and handing it off to sales with that context is wildly important. And then if you're more in a product-led environment, basically giving that customer an experience that is crafted around their job to be done is really, really important. The other thing that I would say when we're talking about like post-acquisition is really understanding, what does your customer want to do next? Now that you've solved their initial job to be done, again, these are recurring revenue businesses. So our goal is to continue to grow and evolve with these customers. So what is it that they want to do next? And really giving the post-acquisition team, so to speak, or the customer marketing team or the sales team, an understanding of how to help that customer evolve, not only in their product usage, but as a customer, as an individual, as a company. So making sure that when you're making these decisions about the product experience, the customer experience, the sales experience, the marketing experience, going back to that customer experience map and having that discussion and making those strategic decisions centered around, when is the right time to introduce this experience? What is the context in which we're introducing it? Who is the right person? And what is the language we should be using? So something that I didn't mention before is a voice of customer brief as one of the sort of outputs. So there's the resources conducted with the jobs to be done. There's a voice of customer brief with a bunch of quotes from those. They're all organized into this long brief where basically it becomes this like really rich document of direct customer quotes describing their problem, describing that better life, describing their anxieties, their motivations, the deal breakers. That document can be used for all kinds of things. One of our early podcasts was with the CMO of Bitly, and we ran through this process with Bitly, and the CMO said on the podcast, she's like, I'm in the voice of customer brief like weekly, reminding myself of, these customers and what they say and what motivates them and their anxieties and their motivations, and really sort of staying rooted in that customer job to be done. This is the CMO saying that she's in there regularly, right? That is being customer led. It's like never making a decision without the customer in the room, so to speak, right? Either with this resource like the Voice of Customer Brief. I often recommend putting stickies around your monitor with your customer's job statement, the customer job statement, so that you are remembering, I'm making a decision right now. Does it actually help my customer solve their job to be done? Does it fit within that context? And then another thing that we recommend doing, obviously, is the KPIs, but setting goals around those KPIs, those very customer-led KPIs, either with your OKRs or performance reviews or whatever, but really centering the performance of teams around helping customers get to those moments of value is another way to really keep the customer in the room.
Great. My last question is about your last chapter.
Okay.
What will get you there?
What got you here won't get you there. Yeah. I mean,
What
really,
gets you there?
yeah, and I think the last line of the book is something along the lines of like, "Don't f it up," because so part of it is that it is very easy to listen to a framework like this and say, "Cool, sounds good, I got it. I don't actually need to do the customer research. I got it. We know our customers. We can do this." And so part of what we're trying to drive home there is that you might not actually know. And the majority of the companies that we work with think they know. They always learn something about their customers. Every single time we have worked with a company, they learn something new about their customers. So what that actually means is, even though this all may sound good to you in theory, don't skip the part where you actually get that rich, nuanced understanding of your customer, because you're just going to continue doing what you've always done. And what got you here isn't going to get you there. So take the time. It's actually a shortcut. Take the time. It's generally only a few weeks. When we run research, we call them insight sprints with the companies that we work with. It's 4 weeks. You can afford 4 weeks to make way better decisions about your customers. So that's really what that is about. Is don't just keep operating with these assumptions. It is highly likely, I would say 99% of the time, you are missing something. And there is opportunity to grow. There's opportunity that is locked up inside the heads of your best customers. You just got to pull it out, give it to your team, and like watch the magic happen. Obviously, I'm being overly simplistic, but really, don't just keep doing what you've always been doing. And so that's really what that's about. Is just don't skip the work.
Yeah, and I know what you're saying deeply, because if everybody implemented all the books that they're reading,
Totally.
business would have been a different place.
Yeah,
You know,
that's right.
so in fact, as you are telling, I mean, I'm thinking, why would not a company not do this every year?
Yes.
Why would you not do this every year? Because that's why you lose business to other competitors,
That
right?
is
Because
exactly
you are
right.
not listening to the customer and somebody else is.
That's right.
And that's why they're building stuff that they need and so on.
We actually do work. We have companies that have come back to us 6 months later, a year later, because their product evolved, or because they knew they were due, or their team changed, or the market shifted, a new competitor came in. There's a lot of reasons to do this type of work. One thing that I didn't actually mention is that the book itself is very short. Part of the reason why we were able to make the book short is because we have a workbook, and the workbook is almost as long as the book itself. It's 110 pages long. I remember I sent it to April Dunford, who we were talking about earlier, and she was like, "You better be charging for this thing because it's a beast." It's a very comprehensive workbook. So at the end of the book, it's really like there's no excuse. We've given you all the tools. There's interview scripts in there. There's a voice of customer brief template in there. There's a customer journey map template in there. Like, all the tools actually exist to do this, but you're 100% right. It is the type of thing that you should be doing regularly. There's all kinds of research that should be done continuously, but this type of very foundational research and foundational strategic resource development, which is a mouthful, but really all that means is like, give your team good tools to work with. If you give them these tools, they will be so much more successful. This type of work really should be done probably annually. And if you're in a space that is evolving, your market is evolving quickly, and your product is evolving quickly, I would say more often than that, even maybe, twice yearly.
So just to wrap up, I mean, what is this? I mean, why is it people don't do it? So what's it with the leadership? Is it arrogance, or is it too much work, or is it, oh, I have a path, I don't want something to come out which will now sort of derail that whole thing and I have to go back to the drawing? What stops them?
Oh, I have so many theories. I think there's a lot of reasons. We are picking a fight with best practices a little bit, but there's a lot of experts / gurus / people who have been there before. I think there is a big tendency, especially in tech, especially among founders, to look at what other founders have done and try to implement it themselves. Like, it worked for them, it's going to work for us. And I'm referring to sometimes it worked for our competitor, so it's going to work for us. Sometimes it's just other founders, right? CEOs and founders, it's a lonely job. They're in a lot of communities. They speak with a lot of other founders. I'm not by any means saying that shouldn't happen. But when you try to emulate what another company is doing with your unique customer and your unique product and your unique team, you are wasting a lot of time. And I think that's the tendency, is that, well, it worked for them, it's going to work for us. And so why slow down to do this customer research thing when it worked over there? And so there's a big reliance on best practices. There's a big reliance on like what worked for the other guy. And there's a lot of experts and gurus in this space that say, I got 100x, 10x growth and all of this stuff. And they make all these promises. And yes, it did work for them. That's right. But that does not necessarily mean it's going to work for you in your context. Again, with your unique product and your unique customers. And when I say unique customers, the job to be done for that other product is probably not your customer's job to be done. And you do need to be rooted in that understanding of your customers and why they choose you over all the other options and what leads them to seek you out in the first place. And all of that nuance that I was describing before, that's all lost when we just look at what other companies are doing or when we rely on best practices.
Bits About Books is brought to you by PitchLink, the buyer-seller engagement platform. PitchLink makes buying easy by enabling high-quality engagement between buyers and sellers through its presentation and discussion modules. Sellers create customized sales narratives using sales collaterals and personal videos and reach out to prospects through a non-intrusive, buyer-qualified engagement. PitchLink requires no installation or download and holds the entire repository of sales collaterals and buyer-seller conversations. Talk to us to know more about how you can engage with customers without intrusion. Call us on 99021 631 32.
Well, this is great. I think we can talk about a few hours.
I think we can, for sure. Yeah.
I really was being very restrained with my questions because so many things are running through my mind, as you can imagine.
Yeah. This is the best topic. I can talk about this all day, for sure.
I'm sure we'll get another opportunity to talk about this. Gia, Thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this chat.
Me too. Thank you.
Thanks, Gia. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a fantastic lineup over the next couple of episodes with great conversations on breakthrough books. Subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you do not miss a single episode. Thanks for listening. Thank you for being with us today on Bits About Books, where we talk to authors about breakthrough books on sales, marketing, and business. We hope this conversation helped inform and motivate as we all navigate a rapidly changing business environment. For us, these are enlightening conversations enriched with knowledge and expertise. We encourage you to go out and buy the book to learn firsthand and implement some of the great ideas we discussed today. We hope to have you with us again in the next exciting episode of Bits About Books. If you liked what you heard, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast platforms like iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts from, and give us a rating while you are at it.
This Bizcast original podcast is produced for PitchLink, the next generation buyer-seller engagement platform, where the mission is to make buying easy. Hosted by Subhanjan Sarkar and produced by Rajiv Aditya. See you next time and have a wonderful day.